What's up, everybody? Jensen Cummings here. Thank you, as always, for tuning in. Today's Best Served Podcast 404. We're talking what restaurants and customers need to know about Kachka's no tipping business model. We're going to be talking to Bonnie Morales, chef owner of Kachka and their group. This is a topic I've been talking about a lot, and we need to get into a new business model at every level. We need to invest in our most valuable assets, our people. I'm going to be a broken record on that. This is another approach. I've heard lots of, Danny Meyer tried it and couldn't do it. Well, lots of great ideas struggle out of the gate. And yes, this is a big behemoth that we need to move. But Bonnie and so many others are paving the way for that. This is part of the Restaurant Week series. So 7 series all week. Make sure and watch those series. Kind of the new ecosystem that's developing within restaurants is what we're talking about. So no further ado, let's bring in Bonnie here. Bonnie, good to see you.
Hey, good to see you too, Jensen.
All right, this is an important concept, and we've talked about it a couple times on our other show, Restaurant Idea Factory. The second it started to show up in the headlines more and more, I'd been watching what you've been doing. I was like, I need to reach out to Bonnie, and you had great things to say already. I can't wait till we go down the rabbit hole of kind of what it means to do this from a business perspective and in building community. And everyone, as always, you dropped some great nuggets for us and advice in the article. So everyone go to bestservedpodcast.com, check out 6 questions with your bios in there, so people want to learn more about Kachka. They can do that there. But give us the quick spiel. Kachka. I love the name. I love the history of it. Give us the quick spiel.
Sure. We opened in 2014, my husband and I, and it's our sort of passion project about sharing the food that I grew up eating. My parents are refugees from the Soviet Union, and I was born here a year after they immigrated in 1980. And it's just food that I grew up eating that kind of I feel has always gotten a bad rap, and I've been really embarrassed about. And I'm really excited to be proud of it and share it with as many people as are willing to try it out. And thankfully there have been so many supporters, and we're excited to still be doing this. And that's sort of morphed into, now that we've laid the groundwork and we love the food that we share with people, wanting to also create a community around that we're proud of too.
Yeah. Tell everyone Kachka, the name itself, what's the origin of that?
It means duck. And it's a reference to a family story. My grandmother was in a ghetto during World War II and escaped in the night before everyone was executed. And she had many harrowing experiences, but one of the ones that stuck with me as a little girl hearing about her was that she was stopped by somebody who was like, you're a Jew. And she said, no, I'm not. I'm a Ukrainian passing through. And they said, okay, if you're Ukrainian, how do you say utka in Ukrainian? They're speaking in Russian, and in Russian, duck, zutka. How do you say duck in Ukrainian? Obviously, she has no idea. She's never been to Ukraine. She's from Belarus. And she just hoped that maybe some of the words are similar. So she crossed her fingers and said Kachka, and the guy let her go. And wow. That could have gone very differently. So that word, I wanted to pay some respect to, just because it means so much to me personally.
Every time you tell that story or when I read it, I get goosebumps. It's so powerful, so harrowing, as you mentioned. And I think it was important in the article, again, you mentioned kind of some of the reason that what you're doing now with the no tipping policy is really ethos, right? It very much like makes all the sense in the world because of how this concept and kind of your journey and your family journey. So I think it's important for us to understand that the business model and the community that you're talking about building, they need to have that kind of connective tissue between them. And sometimes we build businesses that are at odds with what we say and believe and what we actually do in action. So let's get into it. Let's go down as many rabbit holes as we can in the next 10 minutes to give people as actionable as they can. So we talked about in the onset, the title of this was restaurants, customers, and their employees. I'm babbling. And their employees, understanding this dynamic, I think is really important. So let's start with the business model itself. Give us kind of the specifics. When you say no tipping, it means, is it service included? Is no tipping different? Like, how are you communicating that from the business standpoint?
Yeah. So, we do feel like in restaurants, it has, at this point in time, it is baked in that people expect to pay for the service separately from the cost of goods.
Correct.
I hope that one day that won't be the case, and that we will be able to fold the cost of service in to the cost of goods for folks, that make the menu items cost more, right? But we just don't feel like that's possible at this time. And so we do a 22% service fee add-on. That's required. And our motto is like, if you get to, not motto, I guess, but whatever. Our philosophy is, if you get
Sure.
to the bill, and you are surprised that that 22% is there, then we have failed. So we try to hit people over the heads with it and put it in as many places possible to share why we do this, and to make sure
Hmm.
people know that it's coming. But yeah, we do it as an add-on. And we do not, one thing that I'm very, very, very passionate about is that I'm not okay with places that do service fee included, but then still have an additional tip line.
100%.
So we do
100%.
not do that. And I personally do not.
Good.
I feel like if you do that, it's just like, you're
You're double
just,
dipping.
yeah, you're
Yeah.
doing it for show. It's very performative then, I think.
Agreed.
So I mean, I wish everyone the best, and I don't want to like assume any. I feel like it looks like it's performative.
I'll say it for you then. That's a bad practice. Straight
Yeah.
up, that's a bad practice. And I get it. Some people have told me, well, some people want to tip more than that. I was like, okay, but that's not what's being communicated.
You're not,
It's
yeah.
another forced expectation with no communication on the
Well,
on
it's a
the
forced
you know,
expectation. It's also not changing the behavior. Like,
it's not
what we need
exactly
to do is remove the expectation that you have the power to control the people
correct.
that are serving you, which you
Yes.
don't, and you shouldn't, because that's
Yes.
not how that works.
Yes, good. I'm glad you touched on that, because that's been a big question people are asking, and I think it's super important. And then there's all these surcharges. There's a wellness fee, and there's this fee, and there's that fee. People don't like getting. Look at the airline. We've talked about the airline business, like all
Right.
these bag fees and additional fees and additional shipping and this and that. Like, that is problematic. That's been shown and proven. Don't go down that path as a
No.
restaurant. You're
Yeah, and
asking for problems.
that's why we have 22%. Some people ask us that.
Yeah,
We used to have a 5% health and wellness fee, and this
absorb that.
replaced that, to your
Yeah,
point, where we don't want to have multiple buckets.
right.
And so we felt that, like, we actually, it was 5%, and we need 20% for service. So it should have been 25%, but we felt like that was a little over what we could ask
Sure.
people. So we took a little bit of a hit
Split the difference
by
a little
making
bit.
it 22%, but that at least covered some of our healthcare costs.
And the fact that you're doing healthcare, I think this becomes a marketing and community building mechanism that restaurants need to get better at too. Like, that should be a part of your story now, is
Yeah,
that we are in fact paying those. So the 22% starts to make more sense to them without it feeling like you're nickeling and diming with surcharges. But if we're not
right.
telling a meaningful story about the fact that we are investing in our people, then there's vulnerability in that 2, 3, 4% that might be going towards that. If that's front and center, what you're
Yeah.
talking about, like you all do, well, then all of a sudden people feel really good about that 22%. That seems like a deal for what they're
Yeah,
investing in.
and honestly, to that point, people. One of the first questions that always comes up is like, "Well, aren't you going to lose a bunch of customers? Make people are going to be upset about it and frustrated and mad." And
Of course.
yes, of course, there's always going to be somebody. But I can kind of literally on one hand the number of times that's come up in this entire year that we've been doing
Love
this.
hearing that.
And meanwhile, I can tell you like dozens of stories of guests thanking us for doing this. So I think that when you're transparent and you're doing it for the right reasons, that guests see that and understand that and feel that.
Yeah. Tipping
Um,
is awkward, uncomfortable, and it's this like power struggle. And I
yeah.
think at all sides we need to let go of that, which I think is important. So
If you go to the bank and your teller does an awesome job, you don't like slip them a five, right? That's disrespectful. That would actually be disrespectful to your bank teller, right? So,
mhm.
I mean, why would you do that to anybody? It means that they're like, oh, I need to give you a little extra. I need to subsidize your wages because you're not getting paid well enough. That's what that says. But why can't the business just pay
Yeah.
the appropriate amount to begin with? That's how it's meant to work. And by continuing to tip, we're allowing bad behavior on the part of business owners.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. And it's not a sales commission job. That's the thing I hear a lot. No commission is paid by the purchaser of a product or service. So we need to let go of that argument. I think also it changes the dynamic. We've talked about this where you don't work for the restaurant if your money is coming from the guests in your section. Like, don't let go of hospitality. I know there's some struggles there sometimes that if they're not driven by the tip, but that's just we change training and culture within the restaurant, and that changes pretty quickly. So let's talk about that.
Yeah.
On the employee side, what's the experience been?
So actually, just to touch on that really quickly, though, because
Please.
it brought up something that comes up a lot, is people will say, "Oh, well, if I don't, if I can't tip or tipping's not part of the equation, I will not get good service." That's a very common argument.
Fallacy.
But what we have found after a year of doing this is that actually it drives better service, because what I've heard so many times from our staff is, "Oh my God, now I know that the guest is going to tip me 20, not tip, right? Is going to be charged 22%
Mhm.
extra for the service, no matter what. So I have to meet that expectation, that the bar has been set and now I have to get to that." Right. And so they feel like they have
Yes.
to provide the service rather than feeling like they, are like going to be punished if they don't provide it. It's the
Oh,
carrot
that's
instead of the stick.
interesting.
You know what I
I hadn't
mean?
thought about it like that. That brings up two potential scenarios. Number one is exactly that. To your point, they now level of expectation is fixed. It's set, because too often what happens on the other side of that equation is we judge people when they walk in the door at restaurants. There's just no doubt about it. It's the unfortunate byproduct of being a human, and especially when you're financially tied to it. And you look at them and you go, "Oh, they're going to be shitty tippers," and instantly the service level drops. I think about that from the perspective of going out with our family now. They're like, "Oh, here's a family with young kids. They're going to make a mess. They're going to suck. They're not going to
Yep.
tip." And the reality is, like, you're probably getting 30%. We're going to clean up after ourselves. And this kid is adorable. They're going
Yeah.
to make you smile. Like, and so
It
the judgment
it's
goes away a little bit
Yeah, I was gonna say that there's discrimination going both ways,
all the time.
and
Yes.
it's awful no matter how you slice it.
Yep, yep. And now we're setting a clear expectation for the level of quality and service across the board, not just because I got sat in that person's section or that person's section. I love it. I love it. So let's talk about the employee experience, because we've definitely heard, well, you're going to lose all your best people, all the highest performers who bring in and sell the most and this and that. They're going to the place where you eat what you kill, like all of these tropes that we perpetuate. Let's talk about that.
Yeah, I mean, there's no avoiding the fact that if you were on a tipping model and you had servers that were walking away with, 65 to $100 an hour, and that now you're talking about a service staff that's making $30 an hour, that person that was making 100 and is now
Of course.
making 30 is probably not going to stick around, and that's okay too. That is something that we held on to for a long time as a big fear, and I love and respect the people that work for us, but I can't continue to perpetuate an ecosystem that I don't believe in just to like hold on to
Right.
this
It's a
handful,
scarcity
right? And I
mindset.
have to pave the way
Yeah.
for the community, right? And so I think that as long as you can go into it expecting that there's going to be turnover, but recognizing that you're going to bring in a new energy and people that are motivated by other factors is really huge. Because just because somebody that's currently working for you is not willing to take that pay cut, and they probably shouldn't be willing to take a pay cut, right? That doesn't mean that for somebody else that isn't an amazing opportunity. And that when you're offering $30 an hour with healthcare benefits and profit sharing, that's going to be a really awesome situation for somebody else who's deserving and capable.
I could not agree more. We're thinking in this very finite scarcity mindset, and there is abundance. And if we're trying to build the future of this industry, we kind of got called out that restaurants are not a great place to work. So we have to start building something different, because otherwise, once those high performers aren't working at your restaurant anymore, are you cultivating and nurturing what comes next and who comes next? Like, that's an important thing. Kids these days, to me, are not the problem. They're our best opportunity for success. If we're going to build something different, we have to actually build something different. It can't be just lip service. of, look, we offer these really shitty benefits. We must be a great place to work, and we are tacking on surcharges so somebody might make some more money. What you're doing is a wholehearted approach, and that can be tough. It's scary. And so I appreciate it, because we've seen that some of the people that have tried this model over the last 8, 9, 10 years have struggled with it. But I think we've learned from that, and the fact that you're building something for your community is important. So any last thoughts? This was great. I know people listening, watching this are going to know that they're going to feel more confident. And if 2, 3, 5, 10 more businesses deploy this model, like, that's the kind of change I want to be a part of. So any last thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I think that, to your point, there have been so many, high profile folks that have tried it. And so when we first went to this system, we got interviewed by some media, and uncannily, every single person that interviewed me asked us, if Danny Meyer couldn't do it, why do you think you can?
Yeah.
And that's such a slap in the face. Like, oh, you think that just because this one person that you hold, as like royalty can't do it, that nobody can? Because that's never the case. And,
I bet that fueled you.
What'd you say?
I bet that fueled you, pissed you off, and said, "Oh,
right.
watch me now."
Totally. Because, like, we all bring our own experiences and backgrounds to the table. And, there's probably something that I know that Danny Meyer doesn't, and that's okay. And that's, that's just the way that it is. Right. And also it's also something where we're layering one on top of each other. And so things have changed. People's appetite for this has changed. The world has changed. And that can be scary, and that can also be good. And so I just think that I think in general, there's so much fear about doing anything outside of the status quo in restaurants, because we operate on such razor thin margins that you're worried to do anything outside of the norm. I'm in this James Beard Foundation women's program, management program right now. And there was somebody that one of the lecturers was talking about innovation, and that statistically the restaurant industry has one of the lowest levels of innovation of all industries.
Yeah.
And I think it's because we're stuck. We're so nervous to do anything outside of the lane that we're put in, the rules that we're supposed to follow, because we're worried that we're going to lose the tiny bit of profit that we could possibly get, and maybe not be able to pay the rent the next month. Right. And that's a real threat, a real concern, but you cannot be frozen by fear like that. Because then we'll never grow and get better. So you just have to step out of it sometimes. And when you do, you'll realize it wasn't so scary to begin with. And that's what happened for us.
Bonnie, you were exactly the right person that I needed to hear from. We all need to hear from. That exactly is right. We have to shift our mindset. We have to get away from this fight or flight, this cut and control fear mentality that's kind of baked into this industry, unfortunately. So appreciate that. And you mentioned that again, everyone, bestservedpodcast.com, 6 questions with Bonnie Morales. You can, you say that. I said, what was the hardest thing? You're like, honestly, it was a lot easier than I thought, basically. Like, it was only scary until we did it. So thank you for that. Thank you for the leadership that you're showing. I know we got a lot more to talk about this as we continue to evolve. So thanks for being on.
My pleasure. Thank you so much for having this important conversation.
Yes. All right. Cheers. All right, everyone, that is it for this episode. Once again, Best Served Podcast 404, what restaurants and customers, our industry at large, need to know about Kachka's no tipping business model. And the business model that we're trying to create for all restaurants is something new and different. And what Bonnie mentioned there at the end, like, we have to let go of the fear and hold on to the success, in big air quotes, that the quote unquote industry standards have set forth for us. They don't serve restaurants, they don't serve employees, they don't serve customers. So thanks to Bonnie for the leadership that she continues to show, and Israel as well, and the whole Kachka family. Absolutely, they are vanguards.